What's going on, Dragons? Happy Friday, and welcome to episode 7 of the ErCast, your weekly Friday Night Magic pre-show. I'm your co-host, Cory, and with me this week is the man who once offered his soul to Gristlebrand for eternal youth and beauty, but was turned down, Mr. Dylan. What's going on this week, Dylan?
Yo, how's it going, guys? Dylan here, and you know what? I'm still mad at Grizzlebrand for doing that. I'm glad Liliana killed him.
Yeah. This week, guys, we're back at it again for our third rendition of Underused Commanders. So last week we knocked out the two-colored enemy edition. This week we're switching it up and we're going for the allies.
Best
Kind of the
friend
other side of the
colors.
token. Yeah, the BFF of the color pie. So real quick, guys, that will be what? We got Azorius, we've got Rakdos, we've got Selesnya, Demir,
And Gruul.
and Gruul. The coolest of the colors, the Gruelest of the colors.
Gruul's like a solid third place.
Yeah, I think last week we were kind of not, we kind of talked a little bit about how Izzet seemed weird as an enemy pairing because it worked so well together. But I guess Gruul also works so well together, so it kind of makes sense as a, allied, a buddy pair.
Yeah, honestly, Orzhov is another one of those ones where they're enemy colors, but the colors work so well together.
Yeah, which if I had to pick what was the ally of black, I would have gone Orzhov. I mean, Demir's not a bad choice either because thematically, but Orzhov aristocrats just seem to work so well that they should be a ally.
Yeah, honestly, I think that the only enemy color that doesn't really work that great is Boros, because red and white don't cover each other's weaknesses.
Yeah. So here's how we're gonna do it, guys. Same as we've done with the past two renditions. We have picked a commander from each of these color pairings. Ideally something out of the EDH rec 500 and below list. We kind of messed up a little bit the last couple times and just slipped in, but I think this week we've managed to do it where all five are going to come from the dredges of the list.
And the mess ups were entirely my fault because I was looking at the last week of Commander, not the last 2 years.
Listen, I wasn't going to say it, but thank you for stepping up. But we're going to pick a commander from each of those color pairings. Now, we have selected them individually based off of our interests. We are also going to present you guys with three cards that work well with that commander to kind of give you a little flavor of what the deck is all about and hopefully entice you just a little bit. But as we're looking at our guilds, I believe, Dylan, you're stepping up to plate first. Coming in hot with Azorius.
Honestly, one of my favorite color combinations. I need to play it more often.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Azorius, I think, is usually known for control decks, but I think you went a little opposite of control.
Just a little bit.
Okay, so what do we got? What am I looking at here?
All right, so we got Tygam, Ouijatai Master. So this is a human monk, cost 4, 2 colorless, 1 white, 1 blue. It's a 3/4. And this card has the ability that instant sorcery and dragon spells you control can't be countered by spells or abilities. That right there is a little bit of control in this card, which is a phenomenal ability to have on something because it prevents your stuff from being, countered, but your opponent's stuff can still be countered.
But, I mean, we talk a lot about how good Lier is, Disciple of Drown, and that's just everything can't be countered. Now, this is just guarding your goodies, which is, a little spicier of ability, I think.
Yeah, but the thing that really drew me to this was that second ability right there. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, if Tygam Ouijatai Master attacks this turn, that spell gets Rebound, and Rebound is the ability where you exile the spell as it resolves. At the beginning of your next upkeep, you may cast that card from exile without paying its mana cost, which means you can get a lot of value out of your really good spells as long as you attack with this guy.
Now, first off, I have two questions for you, right? And I kind of see it. I have never heard, I'll be honest, I've never heard somebody pronounce it Ouijatai. I've always heard Ojatai. But as I'm looking at it, I can also see how it, like, Ouija board, Ouija tie, like, I could see the pronunciation.
Yeah,
Um,
honestly, I probably mispronounced it right there. That's just what came out for some reason.
No, you're fine, because it actually reminded me of something from Command Fest where there was a player that Cole, who was on the podcast a couple episodes ago.
Yeah.
We were watching them play, and they kept saying "flibbeth" instead of like "fibble-fip."
Oh my
And it was
goodness.
one of those things, like, I could see how it connects the dots in your brain.
Yeah, no, I actually had something like that recently. I was playing against some randoms on Spell Table, and they were using the card from Kaldheim, Yorn, the guy that untaps your snow permanents when he attacks, but they kept calling him Jorn.
Yeah, and you know what? That's another one. Like, if you look at it on face value, I can see where you would get Jorn from. But then because it's obviously like a Scandinavian type set, you see where Yorn comes from.
Yeah, I didn't correct them because this is just nitpicking at this point.
Hey, look, we're in the game to have fun, not in the game to be that guy, right?
Exactly. But yeah, so that's why I like Taigem, because that rebound will get you a lot of value.
Oh, for sure. So Taigam comes in at number 589. So I think we're even starting. Our first one is probably what would have been like third or fourth on our other episodes as far as most common. 1,219 decks. Now, one thing that did stand out to me when I was kind of looking up the stats for this card, it was $4.25 for its cheapest printing until All Will Be One came out, and then it was a was it Universal Legend or whatever they were calling it? Multiversal Legend.
Yeah, the Multiversal Legends.
Yeah, and they came out with like 3 different treatments of it, and the price went all the way down to 14 cents just because it went from scarce to, I can't get rid of this thing.
Well, hey, now at least if you want to pick this guy up, it's not even going to cost you 25 cents.
Yeah, I mean, a $4 price drop is nothing to sneeze at in these kind of budget builds. Also, Rebound is a interesting ability. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this could be the Rebound commander.
Honestly, I could not correct you even if we were wrong there, because Rebound is one of those abilities I've rarely seen on any card, so I don't know all the things that have Rebound.
The only one that jumps out to me is what is it? Ephemerate has Rebound.
All right. I don't really see that card too often when I play, so Rebound's kind of a scarce ability in my eyes.
Oh, it's definitely a scarce ability. I think Ephemerate is just one of those cards you see when it has to do with blink decks.
Yes.
But outside of that specific strategy, I mean, you're probably not running it or running into it a lot. But Taigam, I did have another question for you when I was looking at sorry, I'm going on like a little tangent. But before we look into the cards, I did have one other question for you about Taigam, since you are, as been noted, the resident lore wizard. The story behind Taigam, so he's the Ojatai master, but he's also Sidisi's hand.
Okay, yeah, so that has to do with the way the Tarkir block went on. So this version of Taigam is from the original timeline when the dragons were extinct.
Okay.
But the other one that works for Sidisi, that is from the new timeline after Sarkhan Vol went back in time, and he made sure that Ugin didn't die, so the dragons never died out on Tarkir, and then the dragon clans were formed, and I don't know what caused Taigam to move from one group to the other.
Okay, so essentially, like, alternate...
Actually, no. Ojutai is one of the dragons. So this is the one from the corrected timeline where there are
Right.
dragons. The other one is the one from the non-dragon timeline.
Yeah, because Ojutai is one of the dragons. Okay, so essentially they're just two divergent timeline versions of each other.
Yeah, so in the world where there were no dragons, he worked for a little snake guy. In the world where there's dragons, he works for the dragon that likes to collect knowledge.
Now, we're not talking about him today, but I will also just put out there, Sidisi, another cool commander to check out if you ever want to see an interesting commander. Ojutai, maybe not so much. Ojutai's a little
Yeah, no,
odd.
I own an Ojutai, and I've never once thought about putting it in a deck.
The only other Ojutai card I see a lot is not even Ojutai. It's also one of the Ojutai disciples, which I cannot remember the name off the top of my head, but it's the one that has partner that puts like a 1/1 counter on itself.
I think I know the card you're talking about.
Yeah. But anyways, we're not talking about any of those. We're talking about Tygam. So walk me through it. So instant sorceries, dragons, rebound. How does this all come together to a cool, awesome, badass deck?
Okay, so the first thing that we want to take care of is the fact that for the rebound to happen, Tygam's got to attack. And he's got to stay on board. So we don't want him to die. So we're going to start things off with a Dark Steel Plate to give him indestructible. Dark Steel
Classic
Plate, it costs 3 to play it on the field, 2 to equip. By the time that you get Tygam out, you should have the mana. So this will give him indestructible. And the Dark Steel Plate itself is indestructible. So once it's on him, your opponents can't really get rid of him unless they exile him.
Right, so yeah, which is a whole other pain in the butt.
And you're going to want to exile other things, probably.
Right. Which brings us also to the point that timing is kind of everything in this deck. So because Ojutai has to attack, or I'm sorry, Tygam has to attack first, you pretty much are casting everything post-combat.
Everything you want to copy.
Or post damage, I guess.
Yeah, well, so it gets rebound as long as he has attacked. So after you declare attackers, the rebound should take effect.
Yes, but...
So from declare blockers step forward.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying. It's from declare blockers onwards, because if you did it in response to him attacking, it would technically resolve before he attacks. So in that sense, no, but yeah, from declare blockers onward. And the other cool thing is that a lot of these effects are limiting like first instant or sorcery spell per turn. This is not. So you could dump out your hand if you really want to.
That is true.
But once you've made him indestructible, what are we doing from there?
Well, there's a lot of fun cards that you're going to want to be able to copy. So why not make it so that we copy a card to get those cards with Solve the Equation? Now, I was surprised to see that this was an uncommon from Strixhaven, and the fact that it's not really that expensive, but for 1 blue and 2 colorless, search your library for an instant or sorcery card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle.
Yeah, and then it also gets rebound.
Yeah, and then Solve the Equation gets rebound, so at your next upkeep, you just get to search again. Like, you pay 3 mana, and you get 2 cards of your choice.
Mm-hmm. Listen, anytime you can run a tutor, it's good. Anytime you can get double value out of a tutor, it's phenomenal. And this is coming from a guy that runs demonic tutoring in Hello to copy it and basically put whatever I need from my library into my hand. So multiple tutors is, yeah, it's top tier.
Yep. And, we're casting a lot of spells. This is probably going to be a spell-heavy deck, so we're going to need some defenders, which is where Dika Fractal Theorist comes in. So this is a 5-drop card, 1 blue, 4 colorless, for a 3/3, and it has 2 abilities. I'll go over the lesser ability first, which is blue and 3 colorless, target creature token can't be blocked this turn.
Mhm.
But we're using this for the Magecraft ability. So whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token, and you put X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is that spell's mana value. So with our rebound abilities, every spell is going to get us, well, 2 tokens, one at the beginning of our turn and one whenever we play our instant and sorcery.
Yeah, so you're going to get one when you play it, and then yeah, when it rebounds back, you're going to get another one. And the cool thing is, you're casting all these spells on the rebound. You're getting them back for free, but they still have the original mana value. So, if you cast a solve the equation for 3, you're getting a 3/3 fractal, and then on your next turn, you're getting a 3/3 fractal.
Yeah, now the sad part is, the ones you get off the rebound, they're going to have summoning sickness. You can't use them the turn that they come out, but that gives you some defenders.
Yeah, and I think Dika is honestly a really nice piece for this because it scales with your deck. So the bigger thing you cast, the bigger and more menacing that fractal gets. But if you look for stuff with evasion, there's always, like Talrand is a very famous piece in a deck like this where you're getting your flying drakes. Archmage Emeritus, another great piece in something like this where you're drawing cards. Any of these Magecraft or multiple cast triggers are obviously a natural fit in this.
Yeah, and it took everything in me not to be that guy and be like, here, cast your extra turn spells.
I am not a big fan of, like, personally, I don't know about you, but I'm not a huge fan of extra turn spells.
I am not either.
The only one I like is Temporal Extortion, I believe it's called, which is take an extra turn unless somebody pays 10 life, because it's an extra turn spell, but it's really like a political piece on an extra turn spell.
Yeah, no, I can understand liking that one. I'm not a huge fan of extra turn spells, but if you did want to run some extra turn spells, because they're all blue. Well, there's a few red ones, but you lose at the end of the turn. But
yeah, which you need a very specific deck for that.
Yeah, so blue ones, your extra turn spells. Again, being able to cast the rebounds for free, and you don't have to worry about your spells being countered because of Tygam, so you can just throw down your extra turn spells and they'll just go through.
I mean, heck, if you really want to be that guy, this is the Omniscience deck, where you could just go Omniscience, dump your hand, and then next turn they all rebound back.
Yeah, except Omniscience is an enchantment, so it can be countered.
Yeah, which
people will.
People will, and also I think if you have this deck out, all these people are like, well, I couldn't counter any of his other spells, so I've been sitting here with my one counter spell waiting for the moment I could counter something just to spite you.
But yeah, Omniscience is a way to go with this, definitely.
Mm-hmm. All right, so dump your hand, get stuff back. I could see you kind of also, for a win con, sending this in a lot of different directions. I mean, Azorius is a very famous blink color, so I could see you going the blink route where you're getting double value out of the blink spells. I don't know that there's, looking at the other aspect of this, which is the dragon side, I don't know that there's a ton of ETB blue-white dragons that are going to net you great things by blinking them. But if you want to go the Azorius Dragon route, I mean, you could do that too.
Yeah, and honestly, your instants and sorceries are already unable to be countered, and your dragon spells. You could possibly just throw in a few stacks pieces just to make it even harder on your opponents.
Yeah, I mean, this could just be like a... This could be an interesting pillow fort kind of deck, too, where you go, all right, I've got Propaganda and Ghostly Prison out, and all my spells can't, or, my instant sorcery spells can't be countered, and hope you don't want to attack me because of this and this and this. Yeah, so there's definitely some interesting builds around that. Now, as has been tradition on these videos, we like to rank these things on a power fun scale. Dylan, it's your commander, Tygam Ochitai Master. Where does it fall on the super power, super fun, insane scale?
Okay. Are we doing just one rating or two?
We're going to do one, just like we did last time.
All right.
I'm not mixing it up on you, man. It's we're going straight forward.
All right. I'm going to give this a B minus.
Okay.
I feel like power, this deck's kind of in the middle. Like, I think power would be kind of like a solid C. It doesn't seem like it'd be overly powerful, but it's definitely something where you can get a lot of value out of it. But I would definitely put fun at an A because, like, spells being copied, there's so many routes you can go with that. Like, I'd love to see all the different builds people would do with this kind of idea.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. I I think this is a more fun than power commander for sure, but I don't think it's not powerful. So don't get me wrong in that front. I do think there is some juicy builds out there. Um, I think I would give this an overall like B plus, like somewhere in there. Like if there was like a B plus minus, like a gray area where it's not full B plus, like a 86 kind of area, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Uh because I do think there's a lot of fun in having duplicated spells. Obviously not having or not allowing people to counter spells or abilities, by the way, because we didn't discuss the ability standpoint, but if you do have dragons with abilities, that could be a fun thing too. Um, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, like activated abilities. Maybe like Imrith, I think is a blue dragon that has an activated ability. I probably want countered. Ancient Silver Dragon, which is the roll a d20, draw that many cards. I wouldn't want that triggered ability counter because I would love to get that off. But yeah, I think that's where I stand. It's probably about a B plushish.
Yeah. And uh so I did the search wrong on the Gatherer. I was trying to find all your blue, white, and blue white dragons, but I just ended up finding the blue white ones, not the mono blue, mono white ones. And
um,
funny enough, there's two different Ojitais, and now I got to see which one's the better one because maybe I want to build Ojitai now.
so I think off I know there's definitely some good blue ones. There's like Astral Dragon, there's um Ancient Silver, there's I mean technically there's Sapphire Dragon, which comes to mind, but it's not like super powerful. There is Emrith, which is a mono blue. As far as white dragons, all I can think of is like Ancient Bronze, which is the roll a d20, make that many like fairies.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of white dragons out there, like the dragons from Kamigawa, like
Oh
Owl,
yeah, there are
Dawn
those.
Sky.
Yeah, which by the way, which is a strong rotation of dragons. But moving on, so we've done Azorius. Next up, we're going to be looking at Rakdos, the color of bloody passion and sacrifice. Our Rakdos commander today is one that I located, is Mahadi, Emporium Master. For one, a black and a red, you get a 3/3 cat devil that just says, at the beginning of your end step, create a treasure token for each creature that died this turn. Comes in EDH rank number 644, a little over 1,000 decks at 1,073, and a mere 8 cents for this devilish feline. But that we got Mahadi sacrificing creatures, getting treasure, having a grand old time.
This is actually, I was telling Corey this earlier in private DMs, but
Mhm.
I've considered building this card. Like
I have two.
it seems like a really fun commander. I love the artwork, and it just seems like a really good value engine for aristocrat style decks.
Yeah, I have two. Because there is a couple aristocrat Rakdos commanders I've looked at, and this one's definitely hit my radar because, I mean, honestly, getting a huge treasure value out of sacrificing creatures is nothing to sneeze at. It's definitely, you want something out of sacrificing your creatures, and getting a pile of mana is not the worst thing to get.
Lets you put up more creatures.
Yeah, lets you put out more creatures. Uh, but this deck, I picked out a couple cards that are going to focus on sort of what you do with all the treasure. Now, I didn't focus so much when picking these with how to sacrifice the creatures, right? Which I will say, if you want to learn how to sacrifice creatures in red, you're going to type in the words Goblin Bombardment and run with that. So there's a ton of ways you can sacrifice creatures in Rakdos. Goblin Bombardment, Ashnod's Altar, uh, I mean, Altar of Dementia, I think is.
You've got
You got Viscera Seer. It's a very
Viscera
famous
Seer.
one.
Yeah.
But there's a ton of them out there, so
Yeah.
I steered. Go ahead.
Another thing you can use for Rakdos sacrifice, Dockside Chef.
Yeah, Dockside Chef, which also is a surprisingly it's a well-known card, but it's sort of, I feel like it's pseudo underplayed as well because I love Dockside Chef.
Yeah.
I think it's got great art, and it comes in more useful than it reads, which I always like cards that, when you look at it, maybe it doesn't look like it plays well, but then in actuality, it pops off. It's definitely better than the opposite, which is it reads amazing, and then you play it, and it just fizzles.
Yeah, I've had a couple cards like that.
So instead of focusing up on how to sacrifice or how to make a ton of goblins or whatever you want to turn into your sacrifice fodder, I went the opposite route, which I think is the portion of this deck that I think people will struggle a bit more on, which is, now that I've got all this treasure, what do I do? So the first card I wanted to highlight today is Reckless Fireweaver. It's 1 in a red for a 1/3 human artificer. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, Reckless Fireweaver deals 1 damage to each opponent.
All right. That works really well with these treasures.
Yeah, so works fantastic. You sacrifice your goblins off, or whatever it is. I'm assuming it's goblins because you're in red. But if you sack everything to Goblin Bombardment and start pinging people for damage with that, then you got Reckless Fireweaver triggering on the big mass artifacts you get at the end of the turn. Another way to kind of get the same flavor of effect, and one that I think is a much lesser scene, because Reckless Fireweaver pops up in some decks, Ingenious Artillerist. It's 2 in a red for a 3/1 Human Artificer. It turns out that human artificers really care about artifacts entering your battlefield. But whenever 1 or more artifacts enter the battlefield under your control, Ingenious Artillerist deals that much damage to each opponent.
Ooh, that one will hit a lot harder.
Yeah, for 1 mana more, which seems really weird. So 1 mana more, and you're getting 2 more power. So it's literally the inverse. Reckless Fireweaver is a 1/3. This one's a 3/1. Yeah, so if you let's just say you make 4 treasure, which is not an impossible or hard to do task in a Aristocrats deck. You make 4 treasure, well, Reckless Fireweaver is going to hit everybody for 4 damage for each artifact. This one is also going to pretty much hit everybody for 4 damage in each artifact.
Have them out together and ooh.
Yeah, so it's just you're stacking it essentially. So it is essentially the same effect. It's worded slightly different. Because one is whenever 1 or more enters the battlefield, and the other one is whenever an artifact enters the battlefield. But it's just a nice way to duplicate out the amount of damage you're dealing, which is always nice in these kind of decks, especially when you're talking about a 100 card format where if you can double the odds of you finding an effect on any given game, it goes a long way.
Most definitely. Most definitely.
The third card I wanted to talk about is also a potential commander that I've wanted to build at some point, but is definitely a higher up on the ranking than Mahadi.
This card has recently become not one of my favorites, but it's definitely a card that's definitely caught my eye more recently.
It's caught my eye too, because it's just a fun looking card. So everybody that's ever played me knows that I love control. But oddly enough, not in the blue sense of a ton of counterspells. I just like it in the I like the political control shenanigans of holding the board hostage, which is where Jury, Master of the Review, comes in. Blue and a red, just a Rakdos for a 1/1 human shaman.
Black and a red.
Yeah, black and a red. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, put a 1/1 counter on Jury, Master of the Review. When Jury dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. Now, you're going to sacrifice creatures. You're going to sacrifice treasure at some point. All of those equate to counters. Now, at a certain point, you're presumably, especially late game, you're going to have more power on this thing than someone's life total. Or pretty close. So you can either essentially threaten everybody and go, well, if you come after me, I'll sack Jury and I'll throw all that damage at your face and knock you out of the game. And you just sit around with like the nuclear annihilation button. The other salty thing you can do is always fling it at people, and then you get double the damage, because you could. But I've seen this card get up to like 10, 12 power, and you could always fling it at somebody for 10 power, dealing 10 damage, and then because it died, its ability triggers, and you can do 10 damage to another target.
Yeah. No, Jury has a lot of fun things you can do with it, which is what makes it such a fun commander for such a simple ability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is fun. Now, we're not talking about Jury, though, so don't get into the Jury love loop of it all. We're talking about Mahadi, the hot daddy of Treasure.
And you know what? I actually had to sit there and reread Mahadi, and I noticed something that I didn't notice the first time that I read through it.
It is a cat.
Well, no. It's a treasure for each creature that died this turn. Does not have to be your creatures.
100%. Which is another way you could spice this up is you brought up Darksteel Plate. You can always Darksteel Plate him and Blasphemous Act the whole board.
Yeah, chain reaction, and then cast him at the end step.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not at end step, but second main.
Yeah. And then you've just got a small mountain of treasure. And whatever you want to do with all that treasure's up to you at that point.
Yeah. And if you want to go a little higher end on your cost for some cards to throw into this deck, Revel in Riches.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt. Now, this is a good, from a game design perspective, right? If you want to learn how to win games of Magic, it's about gaining resource advantage on your opponent. Whether that's, I've got more cards in hand, I've got more mana to spend, I've got a bigger board than you. Mahadi gives you that gigantic mana advantage that, especially in the late game, can be very hard to come back from. If everybody's reliant on their lands and maybe one or two mana rocks, something like that, and you do a chain reaction on a indestructible Mahadi, or you destroy Mahadi and bring him back on second main, or however you want to do it. And you suddenly have, I mean, conservatively, if there's 4 players around, you could get 10 to 15 treasure pretty easily.
For sure. And, that 10 to 15 treasure, that's a lot of access to your red burn spells, your black kill spells. You got red and black both have cards that allow you to dig deeper for more advantage.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about some of my favorite spells before, and I enjoy like Jaya's Immolating Inferno, which is X red red, deal X damage to any 3 targets. So if you've got 15 treasure, X is now 13 without including any other land you could put into it. And if you go, okay, my 3 targets are my 3 opponents, those are game-ending kind of moves right there. So it is very... Having more mana than everybody else is such an advantageous position to be in, especially late game, that it doesn't guarantee you a win, but it gets pretty close in the right situation.
You know what? Let's say that we use Mahadi here, and we'll use the 15 as the example again.
Mm-hmm.
And then you decide to play a Comet Storm, 2 red and X, with multi-kicker 1, and for every time that you've kicked the spell, you get to choose a new target. So put 4 mana into the cost and then the kicker, and then that's 10 damage to all 3 opponents right there.
Yeah. Very easy to rack up damage, very easy to rack up mana and utilize it however you need. But that's Mahadi. Mahadi the body. Let's move on to ranking this bad kitty. I think I'm high on Mahadi. Especially the more I was reading it and I was thinking about all the crazy artifact shenanigans I could pull off with this. Definitely for me, Mahadi is A- on the fun power ranking that we're utilizing here.
All right, A- isn't bad. I was thinking along the lines of probably
S tier.
No, unfortunately not that high. I'm thinking like a B- to a low B.
Okay. So a little under Tygam?
Yeah, a little under Tygam.
Okay. Fair enough.
I definitely feel like Mahadi could be a more powerful commander, but
sure.
I just feel like it wouldn't be as fun to play because you know what you're going to be doing. It's just I'm sacking stuff, I'm making treasures, I'm using those treasures.
Yeah, now I think when it gets to win con time, Tygam probably gives you a clearer picture of what your win con is going to be, which is duplicating, whatever your win con spell is. For Mahadi, I think it's a little more open-ended, but it's like, whatever win con you decide, here is all the mana you could possibly want for it. So you're just piling resources until you get to that win con. So I think it's a different flavor than Tygam as far as like closing out the game. But I can definitely see how Tygam might be a more powerful option. But moving on, we are going deeper. So we've hit 589, we've hit 644. Now we're going all the way down to EDH rec number 682. Less than 1,000 decks now. 975 decks for Selesnya, another one of Dylan's picks. Selesnya is your favorite color, I believe? I'm just messing with you, man.
I mean, I do love the Selesnya color combination. When I first got into Magic, after I stopped playing mono white, Selesnya was the first dual color that I ever went for.
Okay. And what did we pick out today?
We have from New Capenna, Best Soul Nourisher. So we've learned from previous videos, Dylan likes his tokens, and this card here, it's a 1/1. 1 colorless, 1 green, 1 white. It's a human citizen. And this is one that works very well with tokens. So it's got two abilities. The first one, whenever one or more other creatures with base power and toughness 1/1 enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on best soul nourisher. So, you know, that's the wording on that makes it a little less powerful than you would want it to be, but helps keep it
Mhm.
balanced because it's one or more. So even if you put three creatures out, you're only getting the 1/1/1 counter.
Yeah, as opposed to what? Whenever another
Right.
creature enters.
But it's a good thing that they did make it so that whenever one or more enter the battlefield, because the second ability, when Bess attacks, each other creature you control with base power and toughness 1/1 gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on Bess. So if it was per creature coming in, it would get completely out of hand.
Oh, for sure. Because especially a lot of let's be honest, a lot of 1/1 creatures are very low mana value creatures. I mean, you're talking 1, 2, maybe 3 mana. There's not a lot of 5 mana 1/1s running
Yeah.
around out there.
And also, you got a lot of spells that put out 2 or 3 1/1s. So the fact that let's say, pay 4, get 2 tokens on the board, but only gives best +1/+1, that's fine because now that's +1/+1 on every creature whenever Bess attacks.
Yeah, I like this. This reminds me of a discount Kyler. Um, Kyler is a 5 mana that is whenever it's I believe it's also a one. No, it's a 2/2, I believe. But it's whenever another human enters the battlefield, you put a 1/1 counter on Kyler, and then all of your humans are buffed by the number of counters on Kyler. So it's a put out a ton of low mana value humans,
Right.
put a bunch of counters on Kyler, and then buff the whole board. So it's kind of like that, but I think this is sort of in a definitely a discount version. Like you're saving on the mana. It cares more specifically about the size of the creature as
Yep.
opposed to the the type of the creature.
Yeah, and that's one thing that gives Bess kind of the advantage is that it is just focusing on the power toughness, which means you don't have to focus only on humans. You can also do
Mm-hmm.
elves, citizens, goblins. Although there's not a lot of white green
Yeah,
goblins running around.
spirits and white. Yeah,
Spirits, yeah. But
yeah. You can definitely have a nice deck that's like here's my 1/1 elf. Here's my 1/1 Gauntlet Greeter. Here, which is an elf. Here's my 1/1 Esper Sentinel. All those kind of things, and you're buffing them all up.
yep. And so the cards that I chose for this, so it I kind of was going under the condition of well, I sort of stuck to human tribal as human typal as I was picking the cards.
We'll get there. We'll get there. I think it's about repetition.
Right. So the first card I picked is Soul Warden. So this is
Mhm.
a 1/1 for 1 white. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life. You're going to want to put a lot of creatures on the battlefield with Bess, so you're going to be gaining a lot of life.
Yeah,
The
both
next,
the Soul Sisters are pretty good.
yeah, it's Soul Sister, Soul Warden, and then Essence Warden.
Mm-hmm.
The second card I picked is kind of a newer card, but it works really well with this deck. Horn of Gondor. This is an artifact that costs 3. When Horn of Gondor enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. Bam. Just putting this on the board, you get a counter on Bess. Then for
Yeah.
3 and tap it, create X1/1 white human soldier tokens where X is the number of humans you control. You got plenty of humans, you get plenty more humans. You get one more +1/+1 counter, but now you got an army that's going to swing huge.
Yeah, because every time you're doing this, you're throwing one counter on Bess.
Yep. And then my final card is honestly a favorite card of mine that I'm surprised I have not bought a copy of yet. Second Harvest. So for 2 green and 2 colorless at instant speed, for each token you control, create a token that's a copy of that permanent.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously with Bess, you want to go wide strategy. and that'll help you with your going wide.
Yeah, the other one that I really like in this kind of deck is called the Copper Coats, which is 2 and a white, and you pick target opponent, and then you make 1/1 humans equal to the amount of creatures that opponent controls.
And for a white and a colorless, you can strive it and target
Mhm.
another opponent, and you can strive as many times as you want to. Call of the
Yeah.
Copper Coats is a very slept on card. It's one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, if everyone else is going wide, you pretty much go, well, I'm going wider, you know?
Yeah. Now, here's a card that I didn't pick because it was kind of an obvious pick to throw into this deck.
Soul Ring.
Champion of Lambholt.
Yeah, also, by the way, before you get on Champion of Lambholt and that ability, um, Champion of Lambholt is like weirdly slept on, especially price-wise, because its ability is like beyond ridiculously busted in the decks it's in, but I think it's only like a 50-cent card or something.
Yeah, but see, the reason why Champion of Lambholt works really well with Bess is because of the wording, where it's each other creature you control with base power and toughness 1/1, which means that even if you got a bunch of counters on your Champion of Lambholt, it still gets the boost from Bess,
Mm-hmm.
which just makes it even harder for your opponents to block your stuff.
Yeah, and then obviously, no one can block anything with less power and toughness than Champion of Lambholt.
So again, I was kind of sticking with the human tribal with my picks, but with Bess, as long as it's a 1/1, it does not matter what kind of tokens you're putting on the battlefield or creatures. So throw in some citizens, throw in some elves. Don't worry about sticking to just humans. That was just how I was going about it, because I was thinking this is how I would build Bess, is Selesnya human tokens.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a solid build. Now, my one question, though, is looking at Bess's art, in lore, is she luring children to do battle for her? Is that what I'm looking at here? Is the child the 1/1?
So I think that just happens to be a child that was just walking around the same area as Bess, because while she is a soul nourisher, I don't think that she's going to be sitting there, taking
Soul
care
prowler.
of kids super, like, she's that kind of uninvolved nanny. Like, she'll make sure you get dinner, she'll make sure you remember to take a bath, but she's just going to keep you up in your room, and she's going to be downstairs just doing whatever she's doing.
Listen, all I'm saying is she's got a ladle with some kind of substance, ethereal substance coming out of it. And if you look at the handle of the ladle, it's also a set of brass knuckles. So I'm sure she's ready to just open a can of whoop, you know what, on this little kid and turn her into a little 1/1, child soldier.
Okay, so you know what? You see it as a ladle, with the green stuff coming off. I just picture that as smoke. I thought that was just a giant, oversized pipe to show how rich she is.
I don't think it's a pipe because it's definitely got a basin at the end.
Yeah.
I guess. Well, here's the thing. Okay, I mean, this sucks for the people listening to this on audio, but yes, the tip. So the tip of this entity in her hands, that's closest to her mouth, definitely has some kind of mouth opening where I could see it being sort of a put your lips here and inhale aspect. But the end does not look like a pipe. The end definitely looks like bent ladle.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, no, definitely a ladle. I just realized that's not a dress, that's an apron she's wearing.
Yeah, she's nourishing you with her soup of destiny.
Oh, okay, so that's how she's pumping everyone up. She's feeding them good.
Yeah, you know how like Dina is the soul steeper and she gives everybody soul tea? This is the same thing, but it's like chilies and broths.
Yeah. Okay, so you can't see it in the card art, but when you look at the full art, there's a guy in the background that has a bowl of whatever she's surfing.
Oh, so he's the one.
Yeah, he's the one.
Oh, and the child is just incidental. I haven't eaten yet.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Fair enough. But where do we stand on Bess? You've made your army with Bess. You've beefed it up to the moon. By the way, since you can mess with like typing, you're not locked into any specific type with this deck. You can also put in like Outlast creatures to give everything. Try to give yourself trample and things like that.
Well, no, because Outlast
has to do with the counters. So you
yeah,
can give like
so it would only
trample.
be Best that would be getting the benefits.
Right. But where do we stand on this on a power fun? Are you building Best tomorrow?
Honestly, I would be very tempted to build Best. I think that I have to give Best. Honestly, so
you say honestly, like I'm going to call you out, like, oh no, you liar! Don't you dare!
I don't know why I say honestly so much, but looking at this on a fun scale, to me, this is like A+ fun, and power.
Sure.
I would probably put it at like. I honestly want to say a B+ on power, so I'm going to give this like a solid A-.
Okay. So here's what I'm seeing, right? So for me, like I said, I think this is like budget Kyler, which is not a bad thing because Kyler is my wife's like go-to deck. So I know firsthand that Kyler is crazy busted for something that's a lot of people find very unassuming.
Yeah, no,
as a commander.
With Kyler, like you can just buy the precon, change out like 10 cards, and you've got a competitive deck.
Yeah, essentially, so she got the Lenore Coven counter precon and found out that she enjoyed playing Kyler more than Lenore.
As everyone does.
Yeah, and then we ended up kind of slowly upgrading that, stripping out everything that wasn't human and making it very streamlined. I think it's got like a mana curve. By the way, its average CMC is like 2.4. So, I mean, that sucker is humming. Its most expensive card in that deck, I'm pretty sure, is Kyler. It's either Kyler or like Austere Command.
Both solid cards.
But it's so knowing how busted Kyler is, I think this is like Kyler light because you're getting all kinds of interesting things on your 1/1s. Also, by the way, there's a lot of busted 1/1s that say like when this does combat damage, do this insane ability, and the way they power scale it down is by making them a 1/1. I don't think this is A+ for me, but I think this is A-. I'll go A- as a whole because I think this is a fun and powerful thing that could be abused, but I don't think I'm as high on it as you are.
Well, I mean, I gave it an A+ in fun, but in overall, I gave it A-. So it looks like we're on about the same page with its overall rating.
Okay. Sounds fair. All right, guys. So we have made it through 3 of the 5 commanders we're looking at today of the allied pairings. We're going to step out, take a quick break. If you guys want to sit back, let's do a word from our sponsor. And when we get back, we're going deeper, darker, and dankier into the dungeons of EDH Rec to bring out 2 more underused ally-colored commanders that you should be checking out, of course. By the way, if you do check any of them out, let us know. Let us know down in the comments. Use this opportunity. If you try any of these decks, you think you've got spicy builds that we're missing out on, hey, link us your Mox Field or your or Tapped Out or Architect or wherever you're building these things on. Link them down in the comments so we know how bad we are and how you're a superior deck builder.
And if you don't have the deck list on any sort of website, just send us a screenshot of all the cards laid out. We'll figure it out.
Just 2 fistfuls of cards. But we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. And we will see you back here in just a minute. And we're back. So, guys, we have seen 3 fabulous underused commanders you should be checking out. We've got 2 more for you that are even rarer to be seen at the table than what you have thought before. Next up, we're moving into Dylan's. I joked about Selesnya being your favorite color. I apologize. I think this actually is your favorite color pairing, or at least the one I personally associate you at the table with the most. We're moving into Dimir, which when we were splitting up colors, Dylan rushed to claim Dimir. He said, I couldn't touch it. I would be a fool if I even picked a commander in his beloved color pairing. So Dylan, what are we looking at here in the blue-black Denizens of Dimir? What do we have?
All right. So, we have from March of the Machines a combo card of Hidetsugu and Kairi. So this is a massive 5-drop commander, 2 colorless, 1 black, and 2 blue for a 5/4 Demon Ogre Dragon. And we're far down on the EDH Rex here with 686. 968 decks built for this guy. And honestly, I'm a little surprised that there's that many decks for it being this low, but I also kind of wish there were a few more decks with this guy.
Yeah, now with it being March of the Machine, I think there's an opportunity for it to go up, in time. When we were looking at the monocolor commanders, I think we had the same conversation about Karn, which was, hey, it's low for now, but maybe if we reassess in a couple months or to a year, I could definitely see this card kind of like drifting up out of the ranks. But what does it do?
Okay, so first off, this card has flying, which flying is a great ability to have for attacking creatures because they're harder to hit. Now, its second ability, when Hidetsugu and Kairi enter the battlefield, draw 3 cards and then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. That's a brainstorm on cast. Well, not on cast, but when it enters the battlefield. Has to resolve. But just anytime that it enters the battlefield, being able to brainstorm, not a bad ability.
No, for sure. And then we got one other ability we're looking at too.
Yep. Ability 3. When Hidetsugu and Kairi dies, exile the top card of your library. Target opponent loses life equal to the mana value. If it's an instant or sorcery card, you may cast it without paying its mana cost.
Okay. So, you've got a 5/4 flyer, already pretty decent threat to have out there. When it ETBs, you've got a brainstorm. And when it dies, you've got essentially a Yuriko trigger in the sense of the damage being dealt based off of the mana value.
Right. Yeah, so now, unlike Yuriko, you don't get the card that you exile, sadly.
Yeah, but in a way you do. If you build your deck just right. So if you load this bad boy up with instants and sorceries in a roundabout way, you get the card.
Right.
But what are we loading into this? And what are we gonna do with Hidetsugu and Kairi?
All right, so we're going to start off with what I think is the least fun card I pick for this, but also the most fun.
Okay, the least but most fun.
The Rite of Replication. So for 2 colorless and 2 blue, create a token that's a copy of target creature. If the spell was kicked, create 5 of those tokens instead, and kicker is 5. So you can pay 9 to make 5 copies of target creature. Now, unless everything lied to me when I looked it up, if you target your commander with this, let's say you pay the kicker, you'll get 5 copies, they'll all enter the battlefield, you'll brainstorm 5 times, and then they'll all instantly die because they get sacrificed to state-based action, And being sacrificed to the legendary rule still counts as them dying, which means now you got your top 5 cards that you're going to exile and flip. So with 5 different brainstorm effects going off, you should have some good cards to hit your opponents with when all those copies die.
Now, I think you have to be careful with, though, is Rite of Replication. If it gets exiled from Hitotsuku and Kairi's ability, you cannot use the kicker.
That is correct. So this is definitely
so you'll just get one usage.
You'll just get the one. So this is definitely something that has more value to be cast from your hand than from the top of the deck. But still, the Rite of Replication, even if you reveal that off of Hitotsugu, you hit someone for 4, and then you make a copy to make 1 token to cycle again and hopefully get a better hit.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely getting good usage out of it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Actually, though, I think... Hang on. The wheels are turning. I think there is a flaw. And correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's a flaw in your strategy. So, Hitotsugu dies, right?
Right.
So it's gone away. You're exiling. So if you... No, never mind. I was going to say, if you exile Rite of Replication, you cannot copy Hitotsugu because he's not going to be there. Because you have to do this at sorcery speed. But if you do it from your hand, then go bananas. Go absolutely bananas.
All right. So
sorry, I'm not a wise rule wizard as some of us.
Yeah.
It took me a second for the brain cells to wheel around.
Yeah, I was forgetting about Hitotsugu dying because I was thinking about having copies on board because you're probably going to have a couple more copy creature spells on board, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. This is a... See, now I'm saying it, let's be honest. Yes, this is a heavy instant and sorcery style deck, but you're probably going to have a couple other creatures out there too, so it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world if you're copying something else.
Yep.
But ideally, yes, you're duplicating Hitotsugu to the moon.
All right, so the next card that we have, Rise of the Dark Realms. This is a 9-drop spell. That's a lot of mana to have to pay for a spell. So what better way to use it than to get it for free? Anyway, this card costs 2 black and 7 colorless. Put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control. So just imagine this. You kill your Hitotsugu, and then you reveal this. Now he's coming back with everything else that has died in the game. Yeah, or everything else that has been milled from people's decks.
Yeah, so definitely don't send it to the... Like, if you're... so here's the kicker to this whole thing, right? If you would somehow know that this is the top card of your library, then definitely send Hitotsugu to the graveyard. Now, it's hard to know what the top card of your library is, because you're kind of taking that gamble. So I think if you're running a Rise of the Dark Realm, hey, this is your Sensei's Divining Top scroll rack kind of moment. If you were going to stick it in the deck, hey, now's the time.
Well, I mean, hopefully when Hitotsugu entered the battlefield, you put this on top.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing, right? So, you need to manipulate your top deck, I think, a little bit for this commander to really pop off, but it's not impossible. I mean, it comes with its own top deck manipulation built in. And then, like I said, if you run a Sensei's Divining Top, come on. It's a no-brainer on that front.
Yep. And now the third card. For a whopping 10 mana, 8 colorless, and 2 blue, Time Stretch. Target player takes 2 extra turns after this one.
This is I think this is one that only makes sense if you're getting it for free, because 10 mana is a brutal cost to pay. Now you are getting 2 turns, which is a little better than the usual 1 turn for 6 or 7 kind of rates. But yeah, if this is a lot more palatable to swallow down, knowing that you're getting it for free
and you're hitting someone for 10.
Yeah, that makes it even better too. If you hit somebody in the face for 10. Now, speaking of extra turn spells, this also would be a great one for the extra turn spell we mentioned earlier. Because you would hit somebody, I believe, for 4 is what the cost of that one is, 4 or 5. And then you would either go, all right, I'm getting an extra turn, or you're paying 10 life. So you're kind of hitting somebody for like 15 or 14.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Or you're getting your life. So, but yes, this is a very nice, like, big mana. I will say separately, Hidetsugu, specifically Heartless Hidetsugu, is a brutal card to run into in a game. But that's a red card, obviously.
Yeah, which makes me even more surprised to see that this is a blue-black commander.
Well, isn't regular Hidetsugu just mono black? Or is it? I guess it would be blue black.
Maybe I cannot remember because I only know of the red one because I never really see the other one. But yeah,
because I remember Hidetsugu from the saga is the other one.
Yeah, Hidetsugu consumes all the saga, which is red black.
Okay. So, and then Kyrie is mono blue then? Because I would have assumed Kyrie was blue black.
Yeah, Kyrie's The Swirling Sky is mono blue.
Okay, so then that means Hidetsugu is bringing blue and black to the table. And some variation.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I forgot that there was a Hidetsugu card that had black in it, because again, Heartless Hidetsugu is the one that comes to mind when I hear that name.
Yeah, which is an absolutely brutal card. So if you don't know that card, guys, it's literally take half your opponent's life total, and it's rounded up, I believe.
Oh, no. It's cut everyone's life in half.
Yeah. So it's a really disgusting combo piece that people will run in like Gruul decks a lot.
Yeah, tap it and it deals damage to each player equal to half that player's life total rounded down.
Yeah, so it's definitely an obnoxious. It's an obnoxious thing to see. If somebody brings out Heartless Hidetsugu, destroy it. Just destroy it on site.
No, I saw people saying that they would run it in decks that have untap abilities and played the one ring so that their life can't be reduced until their next turn.
Yeah. But what, you got any other spicy tech for I almost said Heartless Hidetsugu, which has a ton of spicy tech, but
I mean, Hidetsugu and Kairi, the main thing you want to worry about is just having big costly spells to try and manipulate on the top of your deck. I mean, if you don't care about it being exiled from the game, I guess you could throw in an Eldrazi for some damage.
Yeah, and this is also a great, obviously, so since you want to get a lot of ETB and dice triggers, probably run a decent reanimator package. That way you're not constantly paying command tax. So look at sacrificing, and then run your animate deads, run all those kind of. I mean, it is expensive, and it wouldn't trigger on instant or sorceries, but this would also be a great fit for like a Portal to Phyrexia.
Right, but honestly, just any kind of big spell and to avoid commander attacks, reanimation cards, or just cards that copy your creature, so your Phantasmal Image, Phyrexian Metamorph, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your Glasspool Mimics, any Sakashimas.
Yeah, Sakashima.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Any of those, copy spells, also great fit in here. It also is a great way to get around having to reanimate because it becomes its own stack outlet. due to the legend rule.
Yeah.
Um,
So
where we at?
for the fun and power scale, I think that honestly, I think I'm gonna give it a B
Okay.
because it's just an interesting version of Spellslinger, and also it's a decent kind of burn deck.
I can see it. It reminds me of if there was a Yuriko Spell Slinger deck. Like if there somehow was Yuriko meet Spell Slinger, it reminds me very much of that. I can also see it having sort of like an aristocrat style flavor because it does deal a lot with like ETB and dies triggers. Um,
Yeah,
so I would,
yeah, Blood Otis would be pretty good in this because all of your copies of Hidetsugu will die and ping someone for life.
yeah. Um, so would I mean honestly, so would we talked about this with Namada last week actually, but so would all of those other ones, right? Like your Dictator Erebos, your Great Pax, your Butcher Malakirs, all of those that are like when something dies, you all sacrifice, or I ping you for life, or I gain one life, which are super prevalent in Black. So don't sneeze on those kind of things either. Most of them are enchantments, and then some of them are creatures. But hey, why not? I think this is for me. Mm, yeah, I think this is a solid B. It's interesting. I think it does what these like pairing. They're not partners, but these team up commanders do really well, which is a little bit of flavor from Hidetsugu and a little bit of flavor from Kairi, and it marries together into like a nice quirky kind of balance, where it's not too much of one thing or the other.
Yeah, no, like these two creature commanders that they released for March of the Machines, the team up cards,
Mm-hmm.
when they were first announced, I kind of was against it, but that was just because the first few just didn't seem like they did all that great in combining the cards. But as more were
Mm-hmm.
revealed, I really liked this mechanic.
I do too. I like it because it's kind of like Partner, but without all the inherent issues that Partner has. Um, but there's definitely some good ones out there, like Rashmi and Ragavan. There's Shalai and Halar. I think is probably going to be the one that you see the most longevity out of.
Thalia and the Gitrog monster. A lot of people don't like the
Mhm.
pairing of them working together, but the card is phenomenal.
What's the other one that's Urborg and Multani, I think it is. That's like an
Oh yeah,
18-4.
yeah, Multani and uh it starts with a Y, but the 1212 with the great flavor text.
It's not even a 12. It's like an 8. I'm telling you, it's like an 18-4.
Uh, yeah, no.
It's like it's a vanilla with like pure flavor text.
Yeah,
And a lot of
Yargle and
it,
Multani.
yeah. So stuff like that I think are just funny and also show a lot of interesting potential. But this is one I really like in the sense that it's forcing you into a unique direction that if you just ran Kairi or you just ran Hidetsugu, you're not going to go in those directions. Um, I mean, we both talked about how much we like Zimone and Dina.
Yeah, I mean, I still prefer like the split versions of them compared to their partner card, but the partner card is definitely solid.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun kind of marrying of the two ideas. But yeah, I would definitely give Hidetsugu and Kairi a B. So moving on, guys, if we have kept track so far, you know that there is but one ally color pairing left. And that is none other than the coolest, the droolest, the gruelest. That is red green Gruel, the aggro smash face color pairing of Magic the Gathering. And I took a little bit of a creative license on this one. I'll be up front with you. Because I picked a Lord of the Rings commander that I'm predicting. I'll put it down right now. I'm going to predict that out of all the Lord of the Rings commanders, I'm not going to say this is going to be the least used, but I think this is going to be a slept-on commander when everybody's out here chasing their Aragorns and chasing their Smeagol's and their Frodo's and Gandalf's and all this stuff. I also chose Aragorn, but not the Aragorn that you may be thinking of, the Uniter, or the other one.
Yeah, the King of Gondor.
Yeah, or any of them, really, because we're going under the pseudonym of Aragorn. I chose Strider, Ranger of the North, which currently is at EDH Rec 2,526, which is 18 decks. Now, again, I think like Hidetsugu and Kairi, this will probably go up at some point, but I don't see this cracking the top 100 at any point in time. But Strider, Ranger of the North, is 2, a red-green, for a 4/4 human ranger. It comes with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Then, if that creature has power 4 or greater, it gains first strike until end of turn. Very straightforward ability. The land enters, you buff up the creature, it gets first strike. I know, Dylan, you're speechless. Speechless with how cool this is.
Honestly, from a design standpoint, I do see what they were going for with this card, and honestly, I could see this card putting in work and people just underestimating it.
So not only underestimating it, I underestimated it to the point where I did not even see this card during spoiler season. It wasn't until I actually opened a pack of Lord of the Rings and stumbled on this card that I knew of its existence.
Yeah, like, this is definitely one of those cards that I feel like will definitely always work better in the 99. But it has a straightforward enough ability that building a deck around this will not be that difficult, honestly.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think in the 99, in like an Omnath deck, this thing pops off ridiculously. However, I think it also has the potential to stand on its own. So the first thing to note is that on its landfall trigger, Strider already starts as a 4/4. So it's going to, if you decide that's the creature you want to pump, it's going to become a 5/5 with first strike no matter what off of any land you have enter the battlefield. Now, if you have multiple lands enter the battlefield, which is very capable in the landfall deck, you could continue to keep pumping Strider up and make it, I don't know, a 6, 7, 8, 8, whatever it is. Or you could spread the love and make a bunch of things, get +1/1 in first strike. So my first thought on this was, how do you take advantage of its first strike ability, right? So my thought process was to force combats. So fighting creatures. So if you get a 5/5 with first strike, it's going to take out a lot of unassuming kind of creatures out there. I will admit the first thing I looked up was a complete non-bow card, which was Altasaur. Because that one, I was thinking, whoa, a 10/10 enters the battlefield and fights something with first strike, and I could continue fighting, but it only continues fighting if it receives damage. And since it has first strike, it probably is not receiving damage.
According to this ruling that I just saw, first strike does not have an effect on fight spells.
Guess again. All right, fair enough. So, even still, I think getting a 5/5 and then fighting stuff is probably still the way to go. So first card I picked was Pit Fight, which is 1 in a hybrid Gruul. Instant spell, target creature you control fights another target creature. So you're still forcing combat. Now the first strike will do you a lot of good in regular combat. So I also picked some cards thinking, okay, if you get into fights and you knock out, whatever odds and ends you don't want to deal with anymore, what good is a 5/5 or a 5/5 first striker? Trample it up. So I found a couple things that will help give you trample and also help with the landfall triggers of the deck. First up's probably a card you have never played or seen or used because it's kind of a hidden gem, I would like to say. And that is Zektar Shrine Expedition. For 1 in a red, you get an enchantment with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a quest counter on Zektar Shrine Expedition. Then you can remove 3 quest counters from it and sacrifice to put a 7/1 red elemental creature token with trample and haste on the battlefield. It gets exiled at the end of your turn.
Yeah.
So
this card that you chose,
mm-hmm.
I definitely have not heard of it, even when looking up landfall stuff to try to upgrade my Oboon deck.
Yeah, so it is a single-use kind of card because obviously, and depending on how fast your landfall goes, it could go slow or fast because you need to have 3 lands into the battlefield. However, if you get, let's say it's the beginning of your turn or something, you've got 3 counters on there, you can sacrifice it, get a 7/1 elemental with trample and haste, then putting in your land that you would get in your normal landfall shenanigans. Let's say you go Evolving Wilds into a basic land or something. There's 2 lands right there. You, using Strider's trigger, now turn that 7/1 easily into a 9/3 with first strike and trample and haste. And it's just a nice kind of it's a one-off attack, but it is a one-off attack that can put a serious dent into somebody that's not expecting it.
Yeah, no, because again, like you said, getting the landfall triggers, that's easy to do for any landfall deck, is you're going to have your land searching cards that let you put extra lands on the battlefield. Getting to 3 lands played after playing that spell, you'll probably be able to do that by turn 3.
Yeah, and then what I would do, honestly, is then sit on it until you're ready to swing, because you can also do this at instant speed, so you can do it at, your upkeep or something like that. I mean, heck, not that it's ideal, but if somebody threatens to blow it up, you can always do that, blow it up yourself, and just have a 7/1 blocker for a turn if it's on someone else's turn. But having a 7/1 out there, and like you said, you're going to have like your Azuzas that let you play 2 additional lands. You're going to have, your Terramorphic Expanses or your Evolving Wilds or your fetch lands or whatever that are going to turn into other lands. So it's not unlikely that you get 3, 4 land triggers. I mean, Omnath was built around the whole fact that you're getting 4 land triggers a turn. And that deck is ridiculously powerful.
Yeah.
Now,
if you can do 4 in a turn, you can easily do 2 in a turn.
Yeah, I think 2 is like the floor for a landfall deck, And then, now one of the ways that I think really benefits this kind of deck too is Mina and Den Wildborn, which is for 2 red-green, it's a 4/4 elf ally. First ability, you may play an additional land on each of your turns. So right there, you get a second land in. Then for a red and a green, you can return a land you control to its owner's hand. Target creature gains trample until end of turn. So this is just an easy way to go, I put down 2 lands, my regular land and my land off of Mina. Strider triggers let's say twice. Once for himself, you can make him a 5/5 first striker. You could put one on Mina and Din as well, make that a 5/5 first striker. Then you could pay to bounce those 2 lands back to your hand, giving both your things trample if you wanted to. Or you could use it to just put all the stuff onto Strider for a turn, or all the stuff onto Mina and Din. Either way, you're meeting that first strike threshold, and then giving it trample as well. And then one of the big hurdles I think in a landfall deck is running out of gas on lands to play, because you're playing so many additional lands from your hand or per turn. So this is letting you keep that hand replenished with more and more lands you can keep dropping down.
Oh, definitely. Mina and Din, I feel like, needs to go into any landfall deck that has these 2 colors, which would be most landfall decks.
Yeah, I have not seen the landfall deck that's not running at least green, which maybe it exists, but I think
I've never seen it.
If you want to talk underused commanders that are brutal, find me the non-green landfall deck, and that right there is probably the most underused commander in existence. That 4-color non-green landfall deck. But yeah, I'm telling you, so I didn't know about this card until I opened a pack of it. It, to me, jumps right out at me. Now, do I think it's the most powerful landfall commander out there? No, by no means. I think Obune's better than this. I think Omnath, pretty much all the Omnath are probably better than this. But I think it's unique. And the ability, like giving something first strike and then pairing it with like a Mina or Din or any countless aura that can give it trample. If you can get trample or you get flying on this, suddenly Strider becomes an immediate threat in my eyes.
Yeah, and another good thing about Strider's ability is that you've got the period there after the +1/+1 counter, and then it continues on. Then if that creature has power 4 or greater, which means, if you have a 3/3 on the board, or even like a 3/1, and then you put 1 counter on it, it's got first strike now.
Yeah. Well, like I said, for me, I think first strike, I feel like is already a great ability, but if you can partner it up with your tramples, first strike and death touch, which not so much in red, but in green there are some death touching options, or you can go the colorless route of like Basilisk's Collar. But first strike death touch, first strike trample, or get all 3 of it on something. Now you're talking like serious, like disgusting threat on the board,
Yeah. You know what? For your landfall deck not running green, I guess your commanders could be Morog or Ob Nixilis.
No, thank you. But there's Strider. Like I said, I'm confident he's not going to crack EDH Rec 500, but I think he's not as bad, I guess, or as low down as 2,500.
I could see him maybe getting into maybe the 1,500s.
Yeah, I could see that.
But I don't see him. I do not see this cracking 1,000.
Yeah, I think the 12 to 1,500 range is probably where Strider ends up settling, which is a real shame because obviously all the attention in this set has gone to the big name cards. The Gandalfs, the Sarumans, the Frodo, Sam pairings, the Pippin that gives you like a Mother Runes type effect, Shelob, but Strider's sitting right there, just right for the picking if you guys want to give it a whirl. Power, fun, scale on our very last commander of today's episode. I think C+ is where I'm going to go with this. I think it's more fun than powerful, but especially in the spectrum of landfall decks, I think this is not the most powerful landfall deck you could go for. But I think this is one you can play at the table and maybe surprise some people. They definitely are not going to see it coming because nobody is going to expect you to drop this bad boy at the table. But I'll go C plus for me.
I think I'm gonna give it a C. Not a C plus, not a C minus, just a pretty solid C.
Mm-hmm.
And that's mostly due to the power level kind of dragging it down. Like I said, Strider definitely feels like one of those in the 99 cards. Like I could see him being very useful in Samut Voice of Dissent, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe in Halana and Elena Partners.
Yeah.
Heck, this would even be kind of good in Shalai and Halar.
Not so much because it doesn't do counters.
Oh, right, it's not a never mind.
It's just a buff. Yeah. But I understand where you're going with it. But there you guys have it. That is 5 more underused commanders that you guys should be checking out. We've now completed monocolor, all the 2-color guilds. So if you want to see us continue with this series, I think there's probably about 3-ish more episodes we could talk about this on, which would probably be splitting the 3 colors up in the same way we did the 2 colors.
Yeah, so
and then probably a final one that's for the 4 colors and a 5-color commander.
Yeah, as we've got the shards and the wedge combinations.
Yeah, so if you guys like us talking about these underused commanders, let us know in the comments. Let us know on Twitter, on wherever you want to find us, and let us know. Scream it in the streets. You can do that. And if you do want us to continue with the series, you want to see shards or wedgies? Wedgies or shards? Because I think the natural progression is we go to 3 colors after this.
Yeah. You know what? Since we're asking them, I want to ask you, which do you prefer? Do you like the shards or the wedges more?
I'll be 100% honest. I don't remember which is which.
That is fair. So
in the same sense that allied versus enemy, I had to look them up and be like, I don't remember. I can remember the names of them all, but as far as what, so here's the thing. I remember the names of them all, and if I sat down with a piece of paper and drew it out, I could remember which is which. But off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you which is which.
Yeah, so, your shards are going to be Esper, Grixis, Jun, Naya, Bant, and then wedges are Abzan, Jeskai, Sultai, Mardu, and Temur.
Well, here's the thing, right? I love me some Grixis. I love some Grixis commanders. But I also love Abzan.
Yeah, I really love Naya, but Mardu's also kind of fun, so I'm kind of in the same boat there.
Yeah.
Which means we are completely unbiased, and that means it's up to you to decide which ones we do first.
Yeah, because I think I could find some fun stuff for pretty much any of them. Like Temur is a great color combination. Abzan, Esper, I enjoy a lot of Esper commanders.
Jeskai's a fun one.
Hey, Jeskai. We're recording this on the 3rd of July, so if it was tomorrow, we could have all kinds of red, white, and blue USA jokes.
Yeah, Jeskai the 4th.
Mm-hmm. I also heard people call it the when I first got into Magic, I saw a bunch of people used to call that the Joey Wheeler colors.
I've never heard that, but I did notice on Tapped Out they call it America deck.
Yeah, which I guess makes sense.
Yeah, but if they were going to name it after a Yu-Gi-Oh character, why not the American Bandit Keith?
Because he's a bad guy, Dylan. And Joey's got the thick New York accent.
Yeah, but Logan Howard Keith needs to have his limelight.
His first name is Bandit, not Logan. And we know it.
That's just a nickname.
His parents named him Bandit. You want me to believe that as a child he was his mother was like, Howard, Logan Howard, get in the house.
You know what? Last thing I want to say about Yu-Gi-Oh! In the original Japanese and in the manga, Maximilian Pegasus, his name was actually Crawford J. It was Crawford J. Pegasus.
Yeah, as it should be.
Or was it Pegasus J. Crawford? I can't remember the order.
I have no idea. But yeah, guys, let us know down below. Question of the week, card of the week, and we'll be wrapping up this episode. Question of the week. I found this question to be very appropriate, considering the topic. So this question of the week comes from Yasmani, and they ask, you've done a few episodes about underused commanders. Has your co-host convinced you to try any of the commanders they've picked? So have you been convinced to try anything I've picked and vice versa?
All right. So I'm not going to say that I've been convinced to try any of the commanders. However, after talking about them, I definitely could see the possibility of one day building Namada or Valduct, I believe was the mono red one's name.
Valduct, yeah. Keeper of the Flame.
Yeah. But like, I wouldn't say that I'm convinced to give them a try because I'm not interested in building the decks just yet, but they are definitely decks where I could see myself maybe in the future trying to build it just as a for fun deck.
Now, would you say they've entered your radar because of our conversation? Like, if we hadn't talked about Valduck, would you be like, oh, I'll build Valduck?
Probably not.
Okay, so in some sense, we've hyped each other into it.
Yeah, funny enough, I actually ran into a Valduck deck last night while playing on Spell Table.
And how did it perform?
It did pretty well. I ended up winning that matchup because it was just down to me and him, and then he attacked me with Valduck, who, thanks to all the equipment and things on it, was a 17-17 or something like that. He had 17 life, and I had Deflecting Palm in hand.
Your one moment of glory to flip the tables.
Yeah.
Okay. I think for me, Ghoul-Kala Gissa definitely stood out to me. Now, I will admit that was something that was like pseudo on my radar before we talked about it. Right. So it was definitely one that I thought about before, but I think you talking about it definitely got me a little more hyped to reassess and maybe put that on my to-do list at some point.
All right.
I have left every episode so far with at least one commander where I've walked away like, now I want to build that deck. But I think a lot of them have been the ones I've picked because I've self-hyped myself up for them. So I can definitely say out of the monocolored ones, I left thinking that Ghoul-Kala Gissa and Valduck were the two where I was like, oh, these I would want to definitely look at. Like, don't get me wrong, Maeve looked fun, but Maeve, I don't know if I want to build Maeve. Karn, I definitely looked fun, but I would not want to go near my personal collection with a 10-foot pole.
Right.
Out of the dual color ones, the last episode, definitely Namada stood out to me as just something that will be a fun thing. Out of this one, though, I'm really looking at Hidetsugu and Kairi. Like, I think I remember seeing it when it first came out, but it didn't like. Yeah, listen, you know how it is. When a new set comes out, you're like constantly bombarded every second with the next new commander.
Yeah, no, I feel that, like, what you're saying right now with Hidetsugu and Kairi, when the spoilers were going on, this card completely skipped my radar, but then looking at it now, I'm just like, this would be really fun.
Yeah, like, I definitely remember it existing, but it was one of those, like, it blipped, and then it got pushed down the pipeline by every other bit of cardboard that was coming down. But I think this one I definitely think would be a fun build and a very unique kind of standalone build that would be, a lot of decks you build, you go, oh, I don't want to build another counter deck because I have counters decks. I don't want to build another, this style of deck like Landfall or something. If you already have one, you're like, how many more do I need? This is one of those unique commanders that's, like I said, it is like pseudo Yuriko in my eyes, but
Yeah, it's
it's
definitely
so
it's in that same
different.
vein as Yuriko.
Yeah, but it's different enough that, I mean, the odds of you running into like, oh, there's 5 other ones. Like, are there other casts from Exile creatures or commanders? Yeah, there's a bunch of them. But this one is, I think it stands on its own. I think it's a unique enough flavor that doesn't get blurred in with the rest of them.
Yeah,
So yes,
definitely.
that's what I think I would lean towards is Ghoul Caller Gisa and probably Hidetsugu and Kairi.
Yeah, and again, like I said, I've considered building it myself, but after talking about it, it's like Mahadi. Like if I did Rakdos, maybe it would jump to the top of my Rakdos list. But there's just a couple other Rakdos commanders that are just a little above them.
Yeah.
But honestly, like with the ones from today, I'm not gonna lie, Taigam really seems like it would be really fun.
Would you go in the dragon build or would you go for the spell build or like a best of both worlds?
I would definitely focus more on the spell aspect.
Mhm.
And a card that completely overlooked my brain until we started talking about cards. Vega would be great in this deck.
Mm. That's true.
Because when you cast a
Because it's
spell
coming from exile.
yeah, you're casting a spell from exile, so you'll get to draw the card.
Yeah, which then just kind of keeps the loop going. And Vega is also like dirt cheap too.
Dude, I have like 4 Vegas, but my favorite is still the showcase one that I have in my
Oh yeah, that
Alrune
showcase
deck.
one is fantastic
Yeah,
looking.
no, like that. A lot of people complained about Kaldheim as a set, and I can agree. Kaldheim kind of missed the mark in some spots when it comes to the actual cards, but the showcase is probably my favorite from that set.
Oh yeah, they look great. But anyways, Yasmani, thank you for your question of the week. And guys, if you want to hear or if you have a question of the week that you want us to answer, go ahead. Again, we say it all the time. Leave them down in the comments below or message us, and we will do our best to get them answered, whether it's on the podcast or just answering your question directly. Don't be shy. We're both pretty active as far as responding to people's inquiries. Question of the week has been conquered. Card of the week, Dylan.
All right, so we've been talking 2-color commanders for a bit because we had the enemy colors last week, we had the allies this week. So I wanted the card of the week to kind of reflect that, and we went with the Living Guild Pact himself, Niv Mizzet Reborn. So this is a Wooburg commander, or for people who are new to Magic and don't know what that means, this is a white, blue, black, red, green commander. It costs 1 of all 5 colors to cast. It is a 6/6 dragon avatar with flying. And when Niv Mizzet Reborn enters the battlefield, reveal the top 10 cards of your library. For each color pair, choose a card that's exactly those colors from among them. Put the chosen cards into your hand and the rest on the bottom of the library in a random order. So, you play this guy. You look at the top 10 cards of you reveal the top 10 cards of your deck. And then for each ally color pair and for each enemy color pair, you get to just grab a card and put it into your hand.
Yeah. Now, it's unlikely. It is unlikely that you're going to reveal 10 and put 10 in your hand.
Yeah, like,
but
best
if you build your deck
case
smart.
Best case scenario, you get all 10. Most likely scenario, you're probably going to hit about 3 to 5 cards.
Yeah, which still, I mean, pay 5, draw 5, and you get a 6/6 flyer out of it.
Yeah. And heck, I mean, even getting the 3 cards in hand just for playing a card that you're going to want to play anyway.
Mm-hmm. And since it's in a 5-color identity. This is also one you could run as a commander and have a ton of blink spells, reanimate spells, stuff like that. So it's just constantly entering the battlefield and you're just getting the best stuff out of your deck.
Yep. So, honestly, Niv Mizzet Reborn, it's not one of those cards that I would ever personally play, but it's always a card that I'm excited to see played.
Yeah, and if nothing else, fantastic art. Like, amazing art on this.
Yeah, the art is great on this card.
But there we go, card of the week. All right, guys. So I think that about wraps up today's episode. As always, if you want to get in touch with us, reach out about anything regarding the podcast, Magic the Gathering, or just life in general, you can find Dylan at Inuzuna. That's Inuzuna. I'm Cory. You can find me at Sleepcard, or you can reach out to the pod directly at ErcastPod or contact.urcast@gmail.com. This, of course, is up on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. If you are on any of those platforms, please take a second to leave a like, leave a comment, rate us, any of that good stuff. It really does help out as far as keeping us up on like search history and messing with the algorithm and all that kind of good stuff. So even though it seems insignificant in 2 seconds to you, it definitely does mean quite a bit for us. So thank you very much for doing that if you do have a second. And thank you for making it to the end of the episode. Have yourself a magical Friday, and we'll see you next week.